Previously on the Younger Dryas.
Deeper in, yes. For now, right, this is preliminary stuff. We're kind of getting it out of the way. It's going to be, it is, of course, interesting stuff. And the reason I'm introducing this stuff, the terms, the Cordilleran ice sheet, the Laurentide ice sheet, that those are things, physical things. Those are the names of the ice sheets themselves. But now, we also have a term that implies the time range during which these ice sheets existed. And in the Western Hemisphere, North America at least, that's the Wisconsin Ice Age. The assumption, yes, Mike, will be that when we get a little further into it, yeah, you've done the preliminary. You've learned the terms. We looked at the maps. You've got a picture in your head. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel for every segment. And also to be able to, say, reevaluate things that are coming across, particularly sensationalized stuff that's coming across through mainstream media, that people are oftentimes getting swayed by the propaganda about climate change and environmental change, but have no context in which to understand the specifics of these propagandistic claims that are being made. Right, think of it this way. Right now, what has happened is because the politicization of science has taken place. So now science is looked at as this exclusive elite realm of the expert. So if somebody comes along and asks questions that are in any way challenging or makes claims or assertions or presents a hypothesis that is in any way contradictory to the created mainstream narrative, well, then what happens is you have the cult of science, the experts, who typically oftentimes are invoked without actually being specifically named. The experts say this and that, we're in the midst of a climate crisis. Oh, well, okay, who are we to question the experts? Well, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in the exclusivity of science. What we're doing here, Mike, is, I hope, a small exercise in the democratization of science. That you don't have to be a member of a highfalutin academic institution to have realistic knowledge about specific subject matter.
Welcome to Randall Carlson's definitive work on the Younger Dryas, your comprehensive overview of climate change.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another segment in Unpacking the Younger Dryas, a special series of the Squaring the Circle podcast, where we're going to try to really provide a in-depth look at the Younger Dryas, because there's a lot of interest in it now, a lot of discussion about it. And not that I know everything, far, far from it, but I know a fair amount because I've only been studying the Younger Dryas for 30 years. So I've got a bit of a handle on some of the basics, and we're going to get into that, break this down, because I do believe one reason why I've stayed with it for so long is because it's such an awesome story. It is really a compelling, very dramatic story, and I believe it's essential to understand the Younger Dryas to have any context of the long-term history of the human species on planet Earth, because it is really the most significant defining climatic environmental event since we Homo sapiens have been denizens or inhabitants of this planet. Literally, I exaggerate not. Well, we're going to try to present an antidote to TikTok brain here. So joining me in this noble quest is Mike. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing really well.
Voila, look at you.
All right. How about that?
How about that? Like Moses descending from Mount Sinai with the tablets and the divine light emanating from his face. This is the first thing I thought of when I saw your illuminated face, Mike. Okay, so what we're going to do is, I read a lot of the literature, and one of my regular journals that I read is Boreas. Boreas was the god of the north wind and storms, the cold in general, but it's also the name of a journal, a journal dedicated to quaternary science. Let's see here what we could say about that, if I have anything in specific. Well, I don't, but that's okay. Boreas is a journal that you can find online. Most of it's probably behind paywall, but in 2020, they published an article by Jan Mangerud, who was a Norwegian geologist, born in 1937. In fact, I'm going to just do a share screen because I have a picture of him here along with this short bio. Here we go. Here he is. So 37, what does that make him? Getting up in the 80s, well into the 80s. So he's had a long and distinguished career. So like he says here, he's a member of the Royal Norwegian Society of Sciences and Letters, a member of the Quaternary Research Association, and the International Union for Quaternary Research. He has held a PhD since 1973. This 2020 paper he authored is a good short introduction to the origins of the Younger Dryas phenomenon. He is shown here holding what appears to be a mammoth femur. Could be a mastodon, but I think if he's in Scandinavia, I'm not sure of the distribution of mastodons. In Eurasia, certainly there were mammoths. So I'm going to guess, my first guess would be he's holding a mammoth femur here. Notice the term quaternary here. Let's introduce a new term. We'll have this in the glossary that we agreed that we would provide. Quaternary is simply the Pleistocene and the Holocene together. It's just those two epochs. The Quaternary period follows the Tertiary, and because originally the Quaternary was divided into four. That's where the name comes from. But now, based upon the division epochs, you have the Pleistocene epoch, the Holocene epoch. Together, they are the Quaternary. The Quaternary now is dated to about 2.5 million years. All right, so let's get into this paper that was authored by Jan Mangerud, the Norwegian geologist, and see what he has to say, because this is a very good, succinct sort of summation of some of the research around Younger Dryas. So he says, the Younger Dryas is one of the most studied periods in Quaternary science, and certainly one of the most used stratigraphical terms. The main reason is that the most abrupt and largest climate changes since the last glacial maximum occurred in and out of the Younger Dryas, well within the reach of radiocarbon dating. We'll circle back to talk a little bit more about radiocarbon dating and why that was so important. And it was a critical tool that really signaled a major shift in our thinking about the rapidity of some of these ancient changes in our environment. So then he goes on to say, as we already know, right, the Younger Dryas is named, and we'll be frequently referring to it in shorthand just as YD, and everybody will know what that means. We're talking about the Younger Dryas. Is named from Dryas octopetala, Latin term, a beautiful Arctic flower that is common currently on Svalbard and in the Scandinavian mountains. Nathorst in 1870, this is review, found leaves of Dryas octopetala and other Arctic plants in freshwater clay in Scania, southernmost Sweden. The leaves were not very abundant. Nathorst wrote that if he was able to get out even one identifiable leaf per day, he was happy. I'm guessing Iapetus steenstrup, then invited Nathorst to Denmark, and together they soon found a similar flora in clay pits close to Copenhagen, and later Steenstrup discovered it in a number of clay pits in Denmark, whereas Nathorst added 30 sites in Scania. Now, this was all written back in 1893, and this represents the first inklings of this climate shift that was represented by the changing geographic range of the Dryas octopetala flower. At that time, clay pits for production of bricks were, in contrast to present day, widespread because bricks are heavy to transport over long distances. Nathorst used the term glacial freshwater deposits, describing the lacustrine, there's another new term, simply means lake. But we'll put that, make a good note there of the terms we'll add to the glossary. Describing lacustrine clay, which was resting directly on till in shallow depressions. And he concluded that the clay was deposited under an Arctic climate soon after the glacial ice melted from the site. So he said lacustrine, so this is lakes. Now, obviously, when the ice melts, you're going to have a lot of residual water standing around, forming ponds, lakes, marshes, everything. Just like, I come from Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, right? Well, 10,000 lakes, all of those lakes are essentially the meltwater puddles left over from the disappearance of the ice. Okay, so obviously then the formation of these lakes would have been immediately after the melting of the ice. Right? Mm-hmm. So the assumption is that you're in the same climate zone, basically. There hasn't been enough time that's passed because remember those spikes. You have this introduction of heat energy, meltwater pulses, and then you have bodies of water standing around, okay? So this is what he saw, that there were shallow depressions. Now, what are these shallow depressions here? It was clay, lacustrine clay, resting directly on till. What's till? Let me tell you here. I'm enjoying a cup of organic Sumatran coffee right here. And every morning, and sometimes later in the day, I will have a cup of coffee, and I will sweeten it with about a half of a teaspoon of the Pure Wave energized honey. So this is pretty much what I'm exclusively using as a sweetener now. And there's a number of reasons why I'm really enthusiastic about it. One is it's completely raw. It hasn't been heated. It's unprocessed. So it won't crystallize. Also, the fact that it's harvested from an area in Canada that's a very pristine ecosystem. So it's been independently tested. I've checked this out. It has no impurities, no glyphosate in it, which I definitely like. And as you know, we've had conversations before we ever met the 4RBs people talking about the crisis amongst bees and how important bees are to a functioning, healthy ecosystem. Almost 3/4 of the food that we eat ultimately depends on pollinization by the bees. Our friend Brent that we interviewed earlier in a Squaring the Circle told us about his work with electromagnetic fields and found that by using certain geometric configurations related ultimately to sacred geometry, interestingly, could definitely improve the life, the health and lifespan of colonies and reduce the amount of colony collapse. And then by using the same system of electromagnetic fields in this energizer, hexagonal energizer that uses magnets in a configuration, in a tree of life configuration, they found that they can actually energize the honey. And this energized honey is the stuff that I've been using, and it's seems to be really good stuff. Till is the material beneath a glacier that is produced by the heavy weight of the glacial ice grinding across the landscape. When it does that, it grinds up, it pulverizes, might be the term, the material composing the ground. Whether it's soil, whether it's rock, whether it's organic material, and the glaciers, the way they work, there's no sorting, there's no structure to this material. It's chaotic. You don't find stratification or layering or any of that because that is an indication of the work of water. Glacier, it's going to create this chaotic ground mass, right? And it can be consisted of fine, everything from silt to sand to gravel to cobbles to boulders, right? And then it can include, like I said, organic material, because oftentimes if a forest gets overrun by a glacier, the contents of that forest get ground up in this gigantic grinder, if you will. Sometimes the till under a glacier can be from a few feet to hundreds of feet in thickness, right?
Wow.
So that's the till. Now, the glaciers melt. Well, so then what happens is you've got these vast fields, these vast areas covered with glacial till, and there are shallow depressions. Those shallow depressions will oftentimes be holding water, whether they're on the level of a pond or a lake. Now, there's a term for those depressions, and it's a descriptive term, because early on, people, when they saw these depressions, were reminded of kettles. So that's what they called them, kettles. And so now you have a kettle lake, and a kettle lake will simply be a body of water that's in a kettle. It's one of these depressions. Now let's look at how a kettle works. First of all, here's the definition of the term. And this is an example of what we'll put in the glossary, okay? So kettle is a landform. It's a depression or hole in an outwash plain formed by retreating glaciers or draining floodwaters. Now, the till, because of the fact that the glaciers are melting, a lot of that meltwater is coming at the bottom of the glacier, right? That meltwater is now washing out. It's picking up and entraining is a term, including all kinds of this till. It's forceful water. It's not clean water. It's entraining vast amounts of till. That gushes out from the mouth of the glacier, and that's what creates the outwash plain, right? And then it'll be a vast sheet of this material that wasn't under the glacier directly. It was deposited by glacial meltwater rushing outward from the snout of the glacier. So now here's where we get to the crux of a kettle formation. The kettles are formed as a result of blocks of dead ice left behind by retreating glaciers, which become surrounded by sediment deposited by meltwater streams as there is increased friction. The water flowing around these big chunks of ice. Imagine icebergs, because as the ice is melting, it's not just melting, it's also breaking up. Think of the videos everybody's seen of the calving of ice masses when they come into a body of water, like an ocean or a bay. Big chunks fall off, right? And then you have icebergs floating in the water, big icebergs. That's what brought down the Titanic, right? Titanic scraped up against a big iceberg floating in the water that had broken off the ice sheet. Well, now imagine that you've got this melting down of the ice sheet. You've got high intensity, high shear waves of meltwater washing off the ice sheet. Well, we know from looking at many of these outwash plains that there were many, many chunks of ice that you could think of almost as icebergs. But they're being carried in this rush of water, meltwater, and then as the meltwater moves over and spreads out, what's happening? It's losing energy, and these icebergs are going to end up sitting. There's going to be mass of these icebergs now strewn over the landscape.
And that's what they're referring to as dead ice?
Though that's dead ice, right? Because it's no longer being nourished from above. We'll talk about glaciers because it's important to understand a glacier, but very briefly. A glacier, think of a glacier as almost like living ice. It's flowing. There's a zone of accumulation, usually where the snow is falling and then getting compressed into glacial ice. And think of it, that weight is pushing down, and then you've got two things. You've got the gradient, typically, that the ice is moving down, and you've got pressure at the point of accumulation. So that pressure and that slope constantly causes the ice to move, to flow. Like it's a high viscous flow. Very much like, imagine something even slower, like think molasses, right, compared to any other liquid, right? Molasses has much greater viscosity. Glacier ice is like a slow-moving frozen river. And at the snout of the glacier, the glacier is going to continue growing to warmer and warmer climates until finally the melting at the snout of the glacier equals the rate at which the ice is flowing. Now, if now it's going to be in equilibrium. If you increase the temperature,
Mm-hmm.
the glacier recedes. If you decrease the accumulation, the glacier will shrink back. If you make the climate cooler and you drop the snow line, then the glacier expands. If you
Mm-hmm.
increase the amount of snow falling over the zone of accumulation, the glacier will expand. So a glacier is a very sensitive indicator of changing climate. Okay, so now the ice becomes buried in the sediment, and when the ice melts, a depression is left called a kettle hole, creating a dimpled appearance on the outwash plain. So let's see what that looks like in a few examples. There you've got some kettle lakes. Now, every one of those depressions held an iceberg. And then you've got all of this outwash material. You see, that's what this gravelly stuff is. It's probably here. It looks like it's very thick, like dozens or actually maybe a few 100 feet thick. But if you were able to come and see this landscape right after the meltdown, yeah, every one of these would have a big iceberg sitting in it, a big chunk of dead ice.
Yep. I
You
got
get
it.
the
That
picture.
gives us the visual nice and clear.
These are kettles, but if they have water in them, then they're kettle lakes. So here's another kettle lake in central western Greenland. Look, you see the ice sheet back there? Now, look here. So here, would be on the outwash part. This hummock here is probably a mound of glacial till.
Oh.
Now, you can create structures out of that glacial till, such as moraine, such as eskers, such as drumlins. All of these are structures that are created out of the glacial till, which I will mention interestingly, the first geologists back in the 1800s that were looking at till, they called it drift. Drift, because they saw the action of water as much as the glaciers in forming this material. But look here in the back. You've got the ice sheet, and then look what's in between the ice sheet and the foreground is this massive, and if you look close, this is a massive mound of glacial till right here. But it's undoubtedly at the edge of the ice sheet. So this would be moraine. Moraine is glacial till that is shaped and formed by the ice itself. So picture as the ice is moving down gradient, or as it's expanding, oversimplified, but think of it as a bulldozer. It's moving all of this till in front of it, pushing it up, shoveling it up. But it's actually a twofold process, because till is also being delivered from the ice mass itself. Because in the ice mass, there is all kinds of stuff that's been gouged up and incorporated into the ice. So now think of a succession of conveyor belts moving down to the terminus or the snout of the glacier. When it gets there, that conveyor belt, whatever it's carrying, it dumps it. So in addition to any bulldozing that's going on, you've now got these conveyor belts. And it's delivering.
It's complete chaos.
Yes. And then what happens is when the ice recedes, you've got this very distinct landform left behind that if you dig into it, you can see it's just this chaotic mass of, like I said, silt, sand, gravel, cobbles, boulders, and whatever else, bones, trees, vegetation, whatever is going to be mingled up in there, right? Now, for the rest of your life, as a mortal being here on Earth, you will now know what a kettle lake is, won't you?
I will.
Would a kettle lake exist far to the beyond the ice sheet? No, it wouldn't. It's going to be proximal, we would say, to the ice sheet.
Okay.
It's not going to be distal. It'll be proximal, close to. And the term here we use is peri, like P-E-R-I, just like when we talk about perigee or perihelion, close to the earth, close to the sun. We can also talk about periglacial, which means close to the ice sheet itself. So it's interesting that right where the ice sheet was, you're going to have very distinctive landforms, very distinctive geomorphology. And in the area beyond the ice sheet, but close to it, but not within the ice sheet, beyond the ice sheet, you're going to have a whole nother suite of landforms. And for example, a drumlin is not periglacial, it's end-glacial. Drumlins form under existing glaciers, whereas other features would form, like here, a kettle lake forming on the outwash plain, that would be periglacial. The outwash plain itself, periglacial, meaning it's close to the ice sheet, but it's not within the ice sheet. Now again, look here. Looks like we've got a bay here with ice on it, and all of this mound stuff here, a lot of that is probably moraine, which is, again, composed of glacial till. I really kind of like the old term. Yes, I like the old term drift. But what we'll do here is we're reaching our conclusion of this segment. Here's a nice little glacial pond in Finland that's now got forest growing around it. And undoubtedly, this is all glacial till and outwash here forming the embankments around the pond. And if we go back and look at this here, you can see the embankments are oftentimes excavations into the outwash plain itself. So what we'll do is when we pick up for the next segment is we will begin analyzing this terminology and looking at it in graphical form. And we'll do a little exercise in expanding our vocabulary of geology and earth change and catastrophism. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the first 3 episodes of our Younger Dryas series that we're presenting through the Squaring the Circle podcast. And for your enjoyment and edification, we have included an infographic that sort of summarizes and condenses most of the things that we've been talking about for these first 3 episodes. So I would suggest that if you're watching the video, go ahead and pause when we get to the end and you get to the infographic. If you want to take your time then leisurely studying it, read it, and so forth. Or we're going to provide a link so you can go directly to that link and download a PDF version of this infographic, save it on your hard drive, and pull it up and study it whenever you want. And what I would recommend, if you do this, make a folder because there will be more infographics to come, and you will be able to download those as well and put those into the folder. And again, the idea here is we want you to learn about the Younger Dryas. And so on that note, I'm going to say farewell to everyone, and I will see you for our next episode of Squaring the Circle.